So I'm running I have a remote home lab and I want to be, or a cloud server, and I want to be able to run AI Workbench, Jupyter Notebook in that environment. I want to be able to commit code there. And I talked a bunch about this. The way this thing's kind of set up is we have a remote system. The Git, if we actually have a repo, if we want to work on a Jupyter Notebook project, what actually happens is in the our home directory on that remote server, it'll check out the project, and then AI Workbench will spin up a Docker container and mount that file system on that server into that Docker container. So that means it turns out there's actually 3 ways to commit files in this, if this file system is a Git repo, right? One is the AI Workbench user interface on my local machine and the AI Workbench server that it co-ops, that those can actually do very basic Git functions, right? And I'll show you that, really basic Git function. So if I were to open this one here, you can see it's got a commit capability. It can't do partials, it can't do revert an individual file very well, and it's just, it's a super weak commit all or nothing kind of interface. So that is actually using this AI Workbench to talk to this AI Workbench server to operate against this file system. Another way we could do that is this is what happens when you don't lay your stuff out all the time. I could just SSH into that box, right? And I can run Git commands against that box. I'm sitting in that same Python project, and so I can do all Git from a command line there. And since most people should know how to do a Git command line, that'll work too, right? So that's 2. One is we SSH into the box and do this. One is we let AI Workbench SSH into the box and we use the local GUI. The third is, it turns out, we have this browser interface for Jupyter Notebook. The Jupyter Notebook is actually running in the Docker container, which is this image. And so it turns out it's possible to install a Python plugin that is picked up by the Jupyter container that lets us do Git from inside the browser. So it turns out if I have a Jupyter Notebook here, so this is my Jupyter Notebook, and this is a typical AI Workbench project, and I can make this a little wider, right? I've got, in this case, I've got documentation files, but we've got the standard post-build, pre-build, requirements.txt, and we have code, which is where all the code is for this particular project, and if I were to open it, I end up with my project, right? If I go back here, though, it turns out I have a requirements.txt in here, and if I add jupyterlab-cli to this requirement.txt and start a container with that, it will actually provide me a Git interface inside the Jupyter Notebook. Inside the Jupyter Notebook, it's going to run a Python version of Git, and because that file system is mounted from the Linux system into the container, right, file system, we actually can do pretty much everything we want to do in a normal Git transaction. The only thing I'm going to do here is hit save, and you can see the normal Git kind of things here, and I can do a diff on it, and we can also do things like add it to the change set, right? So in this case, I'm going to undo this so that it goes away, and I have to add that to the change set, or I could revert the whole thing, and it went away because I actually did a negative change that erased all of the changes I made before. So I highly recommend, if you're using NVIDIA AI Workbench, that you install Jupyter Lab Git, and you'll get this interface inside of your Jupyter Lab notebook. Have a great day.